Oh, that's great.
She will call the roll call if we can.
Good morning, everyone. I didn't have any sound, but I do now. Good morning. Good to see you all. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Chair Bell.
Present.
Regent Ball. Regent Brinkley.
Present.
Regent Henson.
Present.
Regent McKinney.
Present.
Vice Chair Milliken.
Here.
Regent Nichols.
Here.
Regent Spiller.
Here.
Regent Thomas.
Present.
Secretary West, I'm here, and then Regent Winninger.
Present.
All right. Mr. Chair, we have 12 regents present, which represents a quorum of the board.
Okay, well, I think we have 10 out of 11, actually.
Sorry. Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Got 10.
And we were sent minutes of our March 4th meeting electronically. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review those. And if so, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I so moved.
Motion, Regent Thomas.
Second.
Second, Regent Milliken. Any discussion, comments, corrections? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. We'll go directly into academic affairs and keep Regent West on the hot seat.
All right, thank you. At our committee meeting, we had a discussion and the committee approved the supply chain management graduate certificate. And I was, is Provost Fisher there today?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Provost Fisher, do you want to go ahead and speak to that? Do you have anything further to add?
No, I would say that we're asking for approval of it. And Chris Shook, the dean of the business college, is here, and I would like for him to speak about it.
Good
Hey,
morning,
thank you.
Regents. I just want to remind you, this is a key part of our strategy going forward. It helps us with adult ed, continuing ed, and it also is a key part of the MBA strategy going forward in modularity, the plug and play, so that people get the exact degree they want. And as just a reminder, the way we determined we needed this degree was we got to the community and did some surveying, and this is highly needed by the local industries. Since our last meeting, I do want to mention that we have appointed Dr. Dana Cosby as the Dean for Graduate Programs and Outreach, which will help us consolidate and get synergy amongst all the graduate programs and enhance our opportunities for outreach to the local businesses. Happy to answer any further questions if you have them.
I would add that I was with Envisions in the last week and a half, and this was at the top of their list of what they needed as we move forward with the new battery plant. So they are excited about this, and they're waiting for the first graduate or the first people with certificates.
All right, that sounds good. Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I would just as a general question, I've said this over the last. I'm a huge proponent of us expanding our structure and outreach and results in graduate education. And this, I know we're starting a review process for our undergraduate programs. Are we going to be looking at our graduate programs over that review process as well?
We will be.
So will we have goals for the number of students we expect to see in these programs?
We will. So when we run the sustainability, what will happen is people who have some or are identified as needing some help, we will have that. They will develop a 3-year plan. Tell us numbers and we will help them move that 3-year plan forward.
Okay, anything further? All right, do I have a motion to approve the graduate certificate and supply chain management?
So
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. And we had a second action item on the agenda, which is the approval of a Maritime appointments for, we've got 2 emeritus appointments that we're looking at, Dr. James Gary and Dr. LaDonna Hutton. Provost Fisher, do you have anything?
I do. I'd like to share a little bit about each one of them before we approve or not approve, whatever you choose. So Dr. Gary began his academic, and I would ask him to please stand up. He's in the room today. Dr. Gary began his academic career at WKU in 1998. He served in various roles, including department chair, and taught a wide variety of courses in support of the programs that were found in engineering and applied sciences. We thank you for all your time here, and we thank you for all your efforts. And I'd like to give him a round of applause. He did a great job. Second person is Dr. LaDonna Hutton. She was the Associate Vice President in the Provost office. It was the first person I believe I met with as I came here. And we had an interesting conversation about budgets. She began her career at WKU in 2000. She served as academic budget and accounting analyst until 2005. Manager for academic budgets until 2011, and director of academic resource allocation until 2012. And then associate vice president for academic budgets and administration until her retirement in 2021. In addition, she served as a part-time faculty member and provided her expertise for several committees. And I can say personally that what she handed me the first day that I walked on campus has been integral to being myself understanding the budget and being able to help with moving the budget forward. And with that, I'd love to thank her.
All right, thank you very much, Provost Fisher. It's really good to have Dr. Gary and Dr. Hutton with us so that we can put a face to the name and when we are discussing all of your accomplishments. So we appreciate you all being here today. Are there any further questions or comments? All right, then we will move forward. Do we have a motion for approval of emeritus status awarded for Dr. James Gary and Dr. LaDonna Hutton?
Moved. Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, very good. The motion passes. And Chair Bell, I believe that's all the business we have for the Academic Affairs Committee.
I wanted to make there was a few changes that I needed to make related to continuance, tenure, and promotion summary on page 22 that you were supplied. If I could. Those came up just yesterday, and as we were looking at the material again, and there's 3 corrections. Aaron Marganella is being promoted to associate professor and tenured in the School of Teacher Education. It is in I believe, the wrong school in there. Ozkin Ozar is being tenured in the Department of Mathematics and is promoted to associate professor last year and is not being promoted to professor in this cycle. So just being tenured. And Kelly Reams is a professor in the Department of English, not in history. So those would be the three changes as you move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank our recipients. Dr. Gary slipped away already. It is very nice for us to have our Maritime people present so that we can actually see faces and we recognize that outstanding faculty and staff are what makes Western what it is, and we know how important they are to the success of our university. So thank you for being here, Dr. Gary.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, just real quick, Provost, yesterday you sent a wonderful message to campus. Now that you have the floor, if you'd like to say anything, because I believe we're at a tremendous day in WKU history, all that we've come through the last 2 years.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I wrote a short, but I hope touching, which is rare for me. And what I was really interested in and what I wanted to say was exactly what you did, Chair Bale, which is I thought the faculty and staff have done an incredible job over a 2-year period to keep this institution moving in a direction for what it's really supposed to do, which is student success. That is to graduate students and to be able to get them the skill set and knowledge set that they need to be able to move forward. And, you know, we've gone through a pandemic, we've gone through a tornado, and you can go on and on and on. And we came out the other end, I think, better as an institution. And because of that, I thought we needed to tell everybody that that's what really happened. And I think that I'm just proud of what everybody's been able to do at this place. And I've only been here a year, so I've not been here the 2 years, but it's been great.
This might also be a good time, Chair West, to point out the recent success since our last meeting of our forensics team and our photojournalism people.
Yeah, forensics has won just, oh, what am I kidding? They won every tournament they've been in, and they won a national championship again, which they are absolutely amazing. Especially since if you look at who they're beating North Carolina, they're beating all of the Big Ten, they're beating all across the country. So they are by far the best team, I would say, on this campus. How's that? And on the other side of the coin, what was the other?
Photojournalism.
Oh yeah, photojournalism won a ton of prizes. And it wasn't just a individual awards. What I thought was the best part of it is that it was an overall award for the whole program. And that's a really important, and that again was against a huge number of photojournalism programs across the country. And it's been amazing. And you will see later on, the concrete canoe people will be here. And you know, the fact that they can actually get concrete to float is worth millions to me. So that's something
I've
to
said it
see.
before, but I think we're the only university in Kentucky that can claim to be #1 in academic programs. And
That's important.
we should all crow a little bit about that.
Yes.
I will touch on that some more in my president's report during the executive.
Right.
Thank you.
We can't
Thank
talk
you.
about it enough.
Cannot.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair West. And we will move to finance and budget. Chair McKinney survived another thing. Sorry, I wasn't here at the last. We understood that time.
Got 2 items on our agenda today. First being FB1, approval of personnel action. You got anything that you want to talk about that? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel action? Second. Thank you. Anybody have any discussion or questions on this side? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, like sign. All right, FB1 passes. The next is the FB2, approval of the budget versus actual. Nothing else to comment on that? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve FB2?
So moved.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Doris. Any discussion or questions?
Just want to comment again, the team, the fact that we get it soon enough, we want to discuss things. I really think that, Sue, you've done a great job at providing us with information, because we've gone through all of the financial discussions we're going to have.
All right. All in favor of FP2, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, FP2 passes. So the next items on our agenda are the information items.
Jeff, can you pull up there we go.
So we just wanted to talk a little bit about the compensation study that was recently completed and implemented the first phase of that. I'm going to talk directly about the staff, and then I'm going to turn it over to our provost to talk about the faculty part of it. So on the staff side, phase one objective, just to remind you, I'll go kind of to the second bullet. There was a 2% salary increase pool approved as part of the current year budget. We distributed 1.5% of that in January, and we held back the additional 0.5% to once the compensation study was complete, to start addressing the most egregious salary problems across campus. So that was phase one, and that's what we did. We implemented that in April. So the initial pay target for our study is 90% of market. And I know I have conversations with my HR folks about this, but I don't want anyone to come away from this that we would love to have a target of 90% of the upper pay band, but the current target is 90% of the, let's think of it this way, of the midpoint of the salary band. So the adjustment parameters, so what we did is we looked at all of those folks below minimum. We considered those to be the most egregious salary problems. And what we did is we set a maximum of $10,000. So there were a few staff on campus that were way below minimum, upwards to 20,000. So they got 10,000, we capped it at 10,000. And then there were some staff that were, let's say $21 below minimum. So we didn't want to just give someone a $21 pay adjustment. So we set the minimum threshold at 1,000. We excluded grant funded positions. They have to basically, this was for E&G positions only, and then also revenue dependent were excluded. So this was, these are kind of some facts about the staff. So there were 1,042 staff incumbents that their salaries were reviewed. 119 of those were identified as below minimum. 82 of those, of the 119, 82 received an increase. And what we did is we also factored in, so the census date when we pulled the salary data was August of last year. So what we did was we factored in the 1.5% salary adjustment that we made in January. So that's really all I have on the staff. We're still working through what the next phases of the adjustments will be, working with leadership, HR, and basically campus. So, Bud, you want to cover faculty? Oh, yeah, that's faculty.
Great. So lots of similar with faculty. So what we did is got the list, and what we did is follow the same protocols as we were just talking about. And I just want to talk about the bottom a little bit. We looked at 642 faculty who fell into the compensation model. What we did was we first made sure the data was right. That was sent, and I thank everybody on my team who spent a significant amount of time looking at it to make sure that the zip codes were right, making sure they had the right titles, making sure they had the right amount of money associated with them, and making sure that we were ready to move forward. We then, knowing 642, looked and took the money that we had, which was the 0.5% that went to the faculty, which was about $380,000. And we then divvied the $380,000 up with a maximum of $10,000 and a minimum of $1,000. At that point, what we saw is that there were 86 identified below minimum. So we had 86 faculty below the minimum, and the minimum was set at 80%. And what we were able to do was move 80 of those individuals over that 80% threshold. And because of the 1.5% increase, when we ran it, what we were also able to do was move a little past the 80% threshold. So when we ran it and we had $380,000, we had a savings, and what we did was take that savings and put it back into the faculty and got them to somewhere around 81%. So trying to move the people who were the most egregiously out of line to where that we felt they needed to be. And that's the first part. As Susan said, the second part will be dealing with the 2% in the future, and the 2% will be done with Susan and I and the teams, as well as the OAC and BAC, which are the budget committees, so that everybody's represented as we figure out how to move forward and take care of some of the other things that are out there, like compression, inversion, and those types of things. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure. First, I'd like to recognize that, this is I wouldn't say the end, this is a major step in a long process that started a long time ago. And I think as this has been presented across campus, everyone has been happy to hear about it. Step along that process. Sure. I think there's still some concern about some of the bands, and there's still some concern about what those next steps might be. And
yeah,
the provost just mentioned compensation along with dealing with compression and inversion. And as those of you know, I've brought this up a few times. And I think it's a strategic issue that we have on this campus that causes us to have problems with our strategic plan. And I would just like to address that with you just in a little bit, that imagine you hire new doctors who make more money than the senior doctors, or you hire new accountants and they make more money than the senior accountants, or lawyers. And we tell the senior lawyers, accountants, or doctors that, okay, if you want to get raises, you got to go out and do more work. You got to see more clients, you got to do more billings, you got to do more billable hours. And they do those things. And then we use that money to hire more junior lawyers, accountants, or doctors at salaries that are higher than what the senior people. And then what's going on campus right now is a little bit of confusion of how is this problem going to be addressed. If it's going to come from central administration, or if it's going to be done in the units where we're asking them to be innovative and address these issues. Lately, the messaging at those units has been, we're tired of hearing about it, or if you don't like it, there's the door, see the door. Where I'm concerned about this is how this will be a failure in our strategic plan. If we're telling our senior faculty, you're underpaid and we don't care, and we can't fix it, so we're not going to, but yet you've got to do more work, we end up with situations like senior faculty not going out to do recruitment, not doing the things they need to do in their classes, perhaps getting shifted to an online class and then not meeting with those students. And so we're not meeting our goals on engagement or other things. So, this is something that I came to this board incredibly concerned about, not just simply because I'm one of those people. I want to be clear about this. I see senior faculty disengaging, and the messaging, the disconnect between what we want, what we heard about how we were going to address this last October, and now what we're hearing in those units, there's a major disconnect here, and we've got to get that cleared up. We've got to move forward in this.
So I would say that I understand the problems. We certainly have looked at the problems. I mean, this was a 30-year problem that we can't solve in 1 year. That's impossible to do. I also know that I have spent a significant amount of times with a huge number of faculty on this campus to address this. And I have sent, and HR can say, I've sent them a message that there are certainly things that we need to talk about to get ready to be able to talk about the next 2% starting August. And those include exactly what you're talking about, looking at how do you figure out compensation related to inversion and compression, as well as thinking about the bands, because the ones that I got back, the bands are an interesting conversation, and so are instructor bands. And we will take the summer to take a look at that to make sure the model's just the first start of a model. We have no problem fixing the model or changing the model as we move forward. But at this point, this is the best start we could have. And it was with the people, I believe, that were the most egregiously underpaid on this campus that needed to be moved into a range to be able to now talk about compression and inversion. And that's really where we are at this point. I mean, I totally get it. We all get it. I would tell you that the units don't solve the problem. It comes from what's determined as the raise, and those are, and the distribution. And I think we've gone the right way with adding the BEC and the OAC so that we have huge numbers of faculty and staff on that committee when the decision is made about how to move forward.
Chair Pat. I have a couple of questions and I'm going to try to make them brief. According to this, you've addressed 80 of the 89 faculty
I did.
below the minimum.
Yes.
What's the correlative number with staff? There was 119 identified. How many have been addressed?
82, I believe it was.
Okay.
82.
Okay. When we talk about the BEC and the OAC,
Yep.
my understanding is that those are going to merge over the next 2 years. Totally understand that. No issues with that. Tremendous amount of work has gone into all of this. But I'm curious, when we talk about solutions, why that one of the lead members, I won't say lead member, a member of the BEC leaves the committee work and pushes for a faculty resolution for $3.2 million with all of the faculty needs outside of committee, but tries to do it through a faculty senate measure. It seems like there's a disconnect in the purpose of the BEC on the surface to me. Now, remember, I'm not on the BEC and I'm not on the faculty senate.
Sure.
I'm trying to understand why a senior faculty member on this campus would try to address that outside of committee through another measure if those measures are supposed to take place in that committee.
So I would answer that by saying that the BEC is the person or the group that can put forward increases in what would be percent increases in pay. And his idea is that it shouldn't come from the BEC, that it should come from the faculty senate to the BEC who has control of that. And that made sense to me. And that is what he did. It didn't come even to me. It's a resolution that went to the BEC to take a look at and see if they could find $3 million. And the reason I would tell you that they chose $3 million has to do with the fact that those $3 million gets everybody to the 90% mark.
It's faculty.
Faculty, yeah. And that was a huge discussion in faculty senate, if you go back, that it wasn't broad enough is what they thought, but they still passed it. But there was certainly a discussion that you can't do one without the other. And that was a discussion.
A quick follow-up, that's okay, Chair. I was troubled a little by something that Shane said, Regent Spiller said, sorry. And I want to just follow up with that because I know the source of that. And I want to make sure that this really didn't take place. Maybe it did. Are either of you aware of a group meeting on this campus where staff were told that if they don't like what's happened related to compensation study, there's the door?
So
I want to be absolutely sure you understand my question.
I do.
Because I do have a source for it. So I just want to make sure the answer is no.
So my answer is no for the faculty. I have answered a huge number of emails telling them that I would look at it and we would be back to them.
Yeah.
And I have not said anything like that in an open forum, and nor would I ever. So that's my answer for faculty.
And for staff, I've not said that or been involved.
No, I didn't ask if you, I know you haven't said it. I know you wouldn't say it. I just want to make sure that you were not aware of
I
that.
was not aware, no.
Me
Okay.
neither.
So just one last follow-up and then.
Sure.
This adjustments that were made here was about $800,000 or so, right?
It was $800,000, yes.
How much money would we need as a goal, just thinking forward, how much do we need to get the faculty and staff to the 90th percentile that you have as a goal? that you're trying to do here?
So I can only say that it's 3.2 million related to faculty. Because when I run the model, and I had the model, but I didn't bring it in, it shows 3.2 million is needed. So the next jump, if you're trying to get everybody to 90%, is a big jump for this institution. And that's a lot of money in a short period of time, and that's where we are. And that wouldn't even take care in some cases of the compression that occurs at the top. It would only get the people who are below 90% to 90%, and then we'd have to still take care of what's the rest of those compression and inversions.
And for staff, it's closer to around 2 million.
So we're looking at
And I want to follow up and just say, we understand that this is a multi-year problem. We don't anticipate a solve. We've had this discussion openly with each other. Publicly, I want to make sure everybody understands, we're not asking for a solution tonight. We know that it's a tremendous amount of work. I've discussed this with HR, with each of you at some level, at the president. And I understand the complexities of it. It's just sometimes we have to clear up questions related to that or concerns that other people have.
Well, and I would say I totally get it. I think we're good. I think it's the first time. And I would also say, I love that the OAC and the BEC will be part of the discussions, because I think that gives everybody a buy-in when the decision is made and we move forward. Whatever we try to take care of, compression, inversion, moving to the 90%, whatever that next move is for us.
How do we keep this updated? Because with the current inflation, I mean, this is gonna be outdated in 6 months.
Well, it's outdated
Yeah.
today already. Who are we
So
kidding?
how do we keep this updated? If it's a multi-year process, we're gonna have to keep this updated, properly address it.
So we're gonna have to continue to do that. I think at the heart of this is what Shane always, sorry. Dr. Spiller talks about all the time, which is, or Regent Spiller, is that the key to this and moving it forward and having more money to take care of what you just described is to tackle enrollment and retention. I mean, those are the two at this point that are the most important things on this campus. And I sat with the deans for 2 hours yesterday and talked about enrollment and retention. We understand that. And we understand that taking care of the students and making them successful is how we will be able to move this institution forward in all of those matters.
Mr. McKinney, so I'm actually proud of the work that's gone into this. We had to pause because of the distraction of a global pandemic. But as soon as we were able, restarting the process and thinking about how it is we engaged in addressing these issues, some of which are, I don't typically like to use that word, but egregious. And that we moved 10% of our faculty and staff up to minimum is a pretty heavy lift in a single year. But we didn't get here overnight, number one. This is not a WKU issue. This is a national higher education issue and a national labor market issue. And the last is higher education, particularly for faculty, is truly a national labor market. For us to be successful at recruiting faculty, we have to compete not with local institutions. We compete against institutions across the United States. And so that's one of the other drivers of that compression and inversion, particularly for junior faculty members, and then also in particular fields. And so the work ahead really is around disaggregating these data, particularly on the faculty side within disciplines and within certain areas. It also is going to require us to decide how we allocate the scarce resources that we've carved out in the next budget. There's a reason we didn't commit to the 2% salary increase being deployed in a particular way, because we're going to work on that during the next several months. We'll have some time, assuming that you all pass that in the budget before a January 1 implementation date. And that gives us both flexibility, but more importantly, the ability to be strategic. And one of the things that we should be proud of is that we address this head on. We know there's an issue. I will tell you, I was in a meeting yesterday with the presidents of universities from across the Commonwealth. We are ahead of most of them in terms of addressing the issue with the data in hand, and not just trying to figure it out ourselves, but really using expertise to shape the conversation. And so much more work to do, much more work to do. But this, combined with the budget model and increased retention and recruitment and enrollment, puts us exactly where we need to be in the next several years to address this. I'm not going to say fix, because it's a structural issue, but we can address it, we can do better. And again, that was our commitment from the start, and I think we've made good progress, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, real quick, I'm sorry.
Sure. No, that's okay.
I agree 100% with what the president said. I do think though, Jason, sorry, Vice Chair, Chairman, whatever. You know, when you get to know people, you have.
Sure.
The issue that I have, and I want to make sure everybody, I really think that this issue, the work in this compression study, is completely different than the cost of living issue. That was something that really wasn't intended, to my knowledge, wasn't intended to be addressed in this. We had the unfortunate issue that came up over the last year and a half or so, where inflation continued to rise at a disproportionate rate than it had in a long time. So I feel like those are two separate things. I don't think we can begin to address, or should we, or we shouldn't, in my opinion, address inflation in an activity like this. Like you say, it's impossible to keep up. We're already out of date. So, but I do agree that we're ahead of other universities in using data to relieve these issues. I do think it's a multi-year process. I do think, though, that there is another issue related to inflation that we should probably address. Thanks.
Now, I guess we'll go to the budget update.
So, today we're going to cover, I'm sorry, my slides are getting a bit messed up.
That good?
There we go. So, I swear I did not move that.
I moved it back.
Oh, okay. Sorry if I'm worried. So we're going to cover an executive summary today of the budget. Talk a little bit about RAMP and the Axiom budgeting software, some revenue highlights, expenditure highlights, and subvention and budget alignment strategies, and then next steps. And so I want to first start by saying is that the budget that we're going to present today is pretty much what you will see in June. It's just going to be very tweaking of some data, but the bottom line should, if it changes at all, I will be surprised. So as the provost and the deans know, we've locked the budget down. So I don't know. Anyway. So on to the executive summary. So just to remind you of a few campus highlights during the current fiscal year. So as you all remember, the First Year Village with the Living Learning Community opened in the fall. The Commons at Home Library opened April, a couple of weeks ago, and it's a beautiful facility. If you haven't been there, I suggest you go see it. It's filled with students and faculty and staff, and it's just very much worth the wait. And also a reminder that we did experience record fall to spring retention for our first year students of 90.9%. And wanted to talk a little bit about our budget priorities for the 23 budget. So first and foremost, keeping college affordable for our students. As we just discussed, keeping faculty and staff compensation at a very high priority. The subvention pool, which is administered by the provost to support investment in our academic colleges, funding for underrepresented minority hires, a strategic initiative fund that is primarily administered by the president to fund strategic priorities across campus. And again, as we just talked about, the evaluation of record inflationary fixed cost increases in real time over the next year. So this is a snapshot of the overall budget at a high level. So you'll see that our budget that we are proposing for the 23 year is about $383.5 million, which is about a $7.8 million increase or 2% over the prior year. And this is our current budget governance structure. So just to remind you, the OAC is the Operating Allocation Committee, the CAC is the Capital Allocation Committee, and the BEC is the Budget Executive Committee. So you'll see how all of these committees have input into the BEC, along with our campus constituencies, the SGA, the Staff Senate, and the Faculty Senate. And then the BEC will formulate recommendations into campus leadership. What I wanted to just mention is, I think David talked about this, or Regent Brinkley, excuse me.
Either way is fine.
What we plan to do, this is the original structure that Huron recommended to us when we built the RAMP model. The provost and I, along with the president, decided that this structure is a bit clunky and that some of these committees are doing a lot of duplicative work and kind of overlapping and kind of bumping into each other. So we've decided to actually combine the OEC and the BEC on a trial basis for 2 years and see if it doesn't streamline the process a bit. This will also allow us to get all of the deans represented on the BEC, which is really important in an incentive-based budget model. Right now, the deans are scattered throughout the 3 committees, the OAC, the CAC, and the BEC. So these were the, after we went through many iterations of going through all these various committees, these were the budget recommendations that were included in the budget that we are bringing to you today. Again, there were a lot of fixed cost increases that were recommended, primarily in facilities and information technology. So you can imagine inflationary and contractual cost within those units. So what we've decided to do, rather than pumping a lot of permanent money into those units, we've decided to evaluate those fixed cost increases throughout the year. The budget office will do that. And what we will do, we don't want to penalize those units for the inflationary increases within like utilities and facilities and projects. So we will isolate those into new indexes and monitor the increases throughout the year and then cover those through one-time funds at the end of the year. We've also included the 2% salary pool that we talked about when we were going through the compensation study. There's been no decision, as we said, as to how that's going to be distributed. We're going to turn that over to the combined committee, the new BEC OAC combined committee, and let that committee formulate a recommendation with leadership during the summer as to how we distribute that. And there were some high priority positions within admissions in philanthropy that we will cover using the strategic initiative fund. So going to RAMP and the Axiom budgeting software. So I can say, and I know the president is very happy with this, we are fully implemented into RAMP. It's taken us 5 years, 4, but we are fully here.
Who's counting?
Yeah. And so as I've shared with some, you can actually go into the Axiom software today, and you will see where the numbers in Axiom tie directly to what you see in your budget document. So I've got to, again, I've just got to hats off to Ronaldo and Brian. They've just done I can't tell you over the last year, the work that they put into getting this all balanced out and tied out. So extremely proud of them. And so as a reminder on how the revenue and expense allocations work in an RCM model, you have revenues that you have direct revenues, and those would be fees that are generated by the academic units. Those go 100% back to the academic unit that generated them. Your allocable resources would be tuition and state appropriation. Your expenses, again, you have your direct expenses. Those would be the budgets that the deans have within their units. And then indirect expenses would be your cost pools from your support units. And then your central funding would be your subvention fund. And these are how the allocable revenues are distributed. And again, I like to remind everyone of this. These were the original recommendations from the steering committee when RAMP was first envisioned. And so there could be some tweaking as we go through this model for a couple of years. Right now, the tuition is divided 75% to the unit that generates the credit hours and 25% to the unit of record or where the student is enrolled. So, you know, some schools are at 80, 20, some are at 70, 30. So as we run through this model for a couple of years, working with the deans, we may decide to tweak those percentages a bit. State appropriation, again, this was the original recommendation out of the steering committee. 80% goes to instruction, 15% will go to research, and 5% to performance. And the metric that measures performance in this model right now is degrees awarded. These are your your indirect expenses, your support unit cost pools. And I like to just, and not because facility reports up to my unit, but I just think it's easy to understand. Facilities is allocated out based on net assignable square feet. So you can imagine if a unit is occupying more space, they're going to get more of that cost pool allocated. Moving on to the revenue. So, oops, I'm sorry, guys. So your tuition and fees, you can see that we are a tuition dependent university. Tuition and fees make up 46% of our budget, 176.5 million. State appropriation is our second largest source of revenue. So 85.7 million or 22%. Just a little bit about our enrollment and tuition data. So these are our budget assumptions. So those first two bullets are really important and really very, so let me just talk about it. We develop our tuition budget based on FTE enrollment. So our FTE enrollment, that's full-time equivalent, is 13,000, almost 14,000, 13,900. Our head count is what we talk about. That's closer to 17,000. But you can't develop a budget using head count because head count will include your high school students, your university employees taking classes that are free. So we have to focus our budget on FTE enrollment. So the first year class that this budget is based on is 2908. We also factored in a 1.2% or 1.19% tuition increase for the fall. And if you remember right, last year the CPE set a 2-year tuition cap of 3%. We used about 2% of that in the current year budget. So we have about 1.2 left. And so the CPE will, I'll talk about that in a moment. They will approve tuition rates in June. So to that first budget priority, keeping college affordable for our students. So our 3-year average tuition increase has only been 1.06%. That's remarkable. State appropriation. So I just have to say, basically, first, thank you to our legislators. This was just a phenomenal state budget for our state and higher education. And kudos to Dr. Caboni and to Jennifer Smith for their work in Frankfurt. They did a great job this year lobbying for WKU and higher education in general. So the total performance funding pool increased by 80 million across the state. That's just phenomenal. And our portion of that was 6.4 million. $1 million increase to the Kentucky Mesonet. And then LifeWorks at WKU received a one-time allocation of 2.8 million, which can be used over multiple years. So you'll see the chart there on the side, the breakdown of our state appropriation. On the capital side, I know Dean Shook is thrilled about this. He has a new allocation in the second year of the biennium to build a new Gordon Ford College of Business. And the other part that's phenomenal for our campus is the asset preservation pool, which is 34 million per year. And that will be matched 15 cents on the dollar. On the expense side, where we were a tuition and fee dependent on the revenue side, we are certainly salary and wage makes up 48% of our expenditure budget. Financial aid of 107 million. That also includes our federal financial aid, our health aid, and our operating budget is about 93 million. Personnel, as we talked about, the 2% salary pool that's included in this budget, again, not to be repetitive, but the distribution methodology will be decided over the summer. And also another important part of our state budget is that it has continued the KERS subsidy of 3.6 million. The subsidy will be reduced, however, 10% per year. And is it over the next 5 years, something like that? Yeah. So you'll see our personnel budget for the 23 fiscal year is about 183 million. Just to give you a flavor of our fringe benefit rates, and the big one that is highlighted there is the KERS contribution of 75%. The good news is that new folks coming in to the KERS system and aren't charged the 75%, but are charged the more normal 12 to 15%. Financial aid. So this budget, the 23 budget, represents the third class of students that are eligible for the expanded scholarship model. And this will be the second year of the WKU family, the Hilltopper Guarantee, and the Border State Scholarship. So there was a $7 million increase to financial aid included in the 23 budget. I know that's a lot of money, and I know we've had a lot of discussion with our deans and provost about that, but I think it's just very, very important to recognize that without this scholarship program, our entering class would probably, if you remember, I said it was 2,900 or thereabouts, it would be more like 2,000. So we would be 900 students off had it not been for this scholarship program. This is a breakdown of our operating expenses. You'll see that operating expenses gone down, and it's not that it's really gone down by 8 million. It's just that in prior year budgets, all of the grants and contracts budgets were put into operating expenses, and the budget office this year actually broke those grant budgets down to where they were appropriately budgeted. So they went into personnel and operating. So you see the large reduction from operating that went into personnel. Also, you see travel going up by about 800,000. That's not really our campus traveling more. What this is a reflection of the new budgeting software where the budget managers and the deans have the opportunity to go in and actually look at their budgets and move money around to more accurately align with where they're spending. So just a few slides on subvention and budget alignment strategies. So participation fee and ramp, it's a 13% participation fee. The 13% is on tuition and state appropriation only. And that generates about 32 million in a subvention pool. Off the top of that subvention pool, you have to cover the expenses of your support units, your auxiliary and your support units. That takes about 20 million. That leaves the provost with about $12 million to help balance the colleges and for some strategic priorities. The other budget alignment strategy that we're doing this year, we are going to use 2.8 million in cash over a 3-year period to help the subvention pool and help reward units that have done good work over the last 3 years, and then help subvent some of the other schools that still have some work to do. And I just think it's really important as we talk about cash. So to remind the board, we have about $130 million of cash procuring. That represents about 174 days of cash on hand. So Moody's, basically their standard for credit ratings is that a university needs to have 110 days of cash on hand. So we're well above that. So not only are we going to use just a very little bit to help, we thought what better strategic priority than help our academic units. So we're taking a little of that. We'll probably take a little, we're going to, after the first of the year, look at some short-term investment practices so we can put our money to work. And this also shows you, this graph, I think it really, our cash probably about 5 years ago was about 65 million less than what we have today. So that's just great work by the campus to basically, when your cash is growing like that, that says that you're actually spending less than you're bringing in. I think that's, so next steps. So the final performance funding distribution, we already received that from the state. And so the fear, always the fear of a budget person is that you budget it more than you actually will get at the end of the day. And so we actually ended up getting, everybody, don't get excited, $2,000 more than what we had budgeted. So I told the president and provost not to spend it all in one place because that's a lot of money. So we already have that step, fine tuning of the budget details, which I told you we'll do over the next month, which I don't expect the bottom line to change. We'll bring the final budget here for your final approval at the specially called meeting in June. The CPE will then officially approve the tuition rate at their June meeting. And yes, I can finally say with certainty, we will take the Axiom data and load it into Banner to start the new fiscal year. So questions?
I have a few. First, going back to this number of days of cash on hand. But actually, let me go first and say, given where we were a year ago, this is tremendous progress. I remember the May meeting a year ago, and you might remember I was a little confused as to what the hurdles were with Axiom, what the hurdles were with ramp, and how we can move forward. And to get to a year and to see where we are now, tremendous progress. And as I've expressed to other faculty, is to please sit through this presentation and see, we're going to be able to make much more innovative decisions moving forward because we actually know what we have and where we're going. But with that said, what I'm concerned about is just to, I've already been talking about salaries, but I want to go to a different group of our population. We know we got inflation. We know food inflation in the area is over 20–30%. We know housing inflation in this area is rampant. And I'm not just talking about houses themselves. I'm talking about apartment rent, which has gone up 25–30% in the region. I am tremendously concerned about some of our staff and even a few faculty having food scarcity and housing scarcity as we move forward. If you look at someone making $30,000 a year, or to 35, as we're advertising for one brand new position right now, and we're doing maybe 1.5% to 2% COLA when we have inflation that's even discounting energy is running at a way that is not sustainable. The city is giving an 8 to 10% raise. They're matching on COLA. How do I go back to those faculty and staff who are dealing with that kind of scarcity and say, it's all okay, we've got more cash on hand? I'm struggling with that. So if you could speak to our cash management strategy, that would help me some.
I do think it's important to remember the difference between one-time dollars and recurring dollars. The budget no-no, and we all know this, is to spend one-time dollars on recurring expenses. Because once you spend them, they're gone. Cash on hand is a great tool for stability. And it demonstrates that we were well under where the rating agencies were. And now we are at a place where we're over it. But these are not resources that you can spend on recurring expenses. What you can do is use them strategically to smooth and to essentially work through challenges the institution will have. I'm as concerned as anyone about inflation. This is a national problem. We're feeling it locally. I will tell you, I think that our sister institutions are in the same range that we are for the salary increases that they are considering. And, we have talked about being conservative fiscally. And if you haven't seen anything during my tenure, it's that we have buckled down and created at least budgetary stability to a place where we're able to regularly do a couple percent, 2 to 3% increase a year. That's not going to address the issue of inflation. And so what we have to do is, while we're conservative, when we overperform and generate recurring revenue, tuition dollars in particular, we need to make the decision about if enrollment next fall is not 29 in the first year class, but is 30 or 31, that additional revenue becomes a decision point for us. And is there a way for us to perhaps increase, with board approval, that 2% pool? And we've had conversations with the leadership group. I've had conversations with faculty and staff Regent that would be an appropriate way to use any additional revenue. So I'm as concerned as you are. You saw a 50 percentage point, half percentage point basis increase yesterday from the Federal Reserve. We're likely to have 2 more of those. It's baked into the market. I am not sure, I'm not sure anyone is sure about what happens with inflation. It seems more permanent than folks were hoping. There were some signals yesterday in the Fed call that suggest there may be a bit of a pulling back into the fall, but we have to watch it. We have to watch carefully. And this is a challenge that again, as an industry, we're facing. At the end of the day, I am desperately concerned. It's one of the reasons we made the move to get those folks who are below minimum up above the minimum, around those who are least well compensated. We have to work there. And I think the work we did on minimums this year will continue into next year. I agree.
Impressive, we've increased our cash while holding tuition at an average of 1% increases. And while I've advocated for that over the last few years, and I have to probably look at tuition increases much higher than 1% a year over the next year.
So we will begin those conversations. I do think it's not like the university also is not affected by this inflation, right? All the fixed cost increases will go up. We have to do it in a way that doesn't balance our budget on the backs of students. A 1% annual increase that is 5 or 10% below where inflation is running is not sustainable. It will eat up any progress that we've made. I think the other thing that we have to be very, very transparent about is that $7 million allocation is a discount strategy, right? And so what you see is the scholarship program really beginning to do what it was designed to do. And the budget model also beginning what it was designed to do. And so, you know, there's putting a new budget model in place, number one, is difficult in the first, just to do technically. And I'm proud that we're at a place where we're not emailing one another Excel spreadsheets deciding what to do. But we actually have a tool that allows us to do multi-year forecasting, right? So that is a tremendous improvement over where we were for our financial and fiscal management. But the other is that this is a culture change for our institution. Not just the transparency, the advance notice that we've given to the board, but taking the black box and opening it up for our deans and for leadership. We've had tremendous conversations, and really for the first time in 5 years, where the deans, because they are quote unquote paying for the operations of enrollment management, sat down and said, look, how are we a part of this solution? And the flip side is the case as well. What are the services we're getting from you? Because we're paying essentially for your operations. I have been impressed about the collaboration, the cooperation across the colleges and with the auxiliary and support units. That will continue to increase, getting out of our silos and partnering, working together. I think the other is, while there is some work to do, faculty and staff within the academic unit should know they're going to have some flexibility that has not existed before. So the dean of the College of Business is going to have about an $800,000 pool of dollars to allocate within the college how he sees fit for strategies within the college, short-term and long-term. College of Education has about a $500,000 pool. Potter College has an $800,000 pool to do the same with. Now, Dean Brown is not with us today. I will argue. Oh, is he? Other Dean Brown.
I'm Dean Brown today.
Dean Terrence Brown is not with us today. I think one of the questions, and you heard this through the talk about how it is these dollars are allocated. Our College of Arts and Letters is in really good shape because of the bulk of colonnade courses that they teach. And so they're going to have some resources. They have some difficult work ahead. And then to Dean Basta and the other Dean Brown, they are not rewarded this year, but they've made good progress. And what happens in the next couple of years is they also pop up above that line and have resources for deans to decide how to allocate. And so when you think about what this does, it creates 5 academic enterprises that are run on their own with decisions being made about the students, retention, closer to the students and with the faculty. And so I'm really proud of where this has gotten us. This will evolve over time, but it is transformative for how we run this university. And there are headwinds, but I don't want to lose sight of, we talked about this 4 years ago, and in 4 years, look at what we've accomplished. And that's the thing to celebrate today. Sorry, I hate to take that.
But I don't mind. You know, we had our budget meetings and I want to stress to the full board, Jan was in the one with me. It was a tremendous amount of information, good information. The information we've been given as a board was probably the best, most comprehensive list of data that we've been given. And the acknowledgement that I want to also provide is that moving the grant people, and I'm someone that has several grant funded positions, over to the pool where they belong with the assistance of the new software and whatever mechanisms were put in place, I think is a tremendous asset because it gives a more complete picture as to what the university spends on personnel, moving that out of operating. So all of these are good moves. All of it's a good move. Also, we realize and recognize the tremendous change in net position, I shouldn't say net position, in the overall cash position, in the structure based on the revenue model, related tuition and all of that. It has been a tremendous challenge. The pandemic didn't help that. It was something that was that a lot of people on this campus, a lot of people in this room, besides me and everybody else, have spent enormous hours beyond the 37.5 or 50, as we like to call it, if you're on salary, beyond what we would normally do. All that being said, the thing I didn't have time to ask because it didn't really hit me until I left the other meeting, and I hate to do it in open forum, but I need to because enough people have walked up to me. Can we take I guess the phrase that troubled me is we want to invest some of the cash on hand to get a return financially. I'm assuming that's in non-personnel assets, so like a note or some bank investment that would return 3, 4, 5% over a short-term period, some acknowledged return. You know, what if we took 4 million, 4.5 million, 3 million, 3.5 million, pick a number, you all are great at that, and invested that in a one-time relief for cost of living? Because, you know, I have people continuously, and I mean over the last few days, they know a board meeting's coming. They walk up and they voice the same concerns. My rent's gone up 20%. Groceries are up 10%. I can't buy things. And it's not that they need to change their lifestyle. It's that if we are in a position, would this not be a good strategic investment? I'm the third regent that has made cost of living as a concern today. And I think that's fair for this board to address. Now, does that mean everybody on this campus? No, maybe it's just people below 75,000, 60,000, pick a number. But I am extremely worried about us filling positions. And I'm not going to point to the number of vacant positions and say an area like admissions and use that as a flag of saying, why are those vacant? But I could. And these are things that concern me in the short term. I agree, the Fed raised the rate. I think that's going to have an enormous impact if they raise it another 0.5% in 6 months or a year, another 0.5% after that. But I think those are fair to help get inflation under control based on my limited knowledge. But I am concerned and would respectfully ask that in the looking at this budget, and I realize that you all have locked it, if that was the term that was used. I just think a one-time investment to some degree, at some level, in some of the lowest paid people on this campus might be beneficial. I normally would never ask for one time. I agree with the president. I don't agree with using one-time money to fix salary problems, but I am extremely concerned about cost of living for this year, something that none of us caused. But we may be able to fix.
I think, David, that's a great point. And when you think about cash management strategies, We've not ever done this before as an institution, but we're going to. Think about $100 million of cash on hand. Given where interest rates are heading, putting that in a CD market type of account that would generate a small percentage return would allow you to leverage that to create additional revenue that you could then allocate. That doesn't touch the corpus even. And so I do think it's a great idea. It's a conversation for the BEC to have. I don't think we're going to make that decision today. I don't think that's a board level decision. I think that's a university decision. And I will now turn to Susan and Bud and say, as you all begin your work over the summer, along with the deans and representatives from all of our shared governance groups, put that into the conversation. I think it makes perfect sense. And Regent Brinkley, I appreciate the thought and the creativity. You had floated this idea with us individually, and I do think it's something that we need to take a look at.
Can I, Don, just, first of all, you made a key statement. This is a university issue. It's not, to me, it's not a board region issue. But as one region, I would say that this is something that as a region, I would fully support. I think would be great for the university to consider.
I'm sorry, George. We represent the university. There's 3 elected members on this board. We are not doing our job if we don't bring concerns to this body.
This is great. I think it's,
I just want to say, I do think it's a university or a board issue when it gets to the level that it has. And that's okay. I mean, that we can agree to disagree on that. And
I understand your point. I
There's
just think
3
that
elected members.
you 3, but you represent the university.
Right.
And I'm a regent, not a representative. I'm not employed by the university. And all I'm saying is that when you get down to this level, this is a business decision. This is a management decision. It's a leadership decision at the university level. And I feel like if you take non-university employees into that, you're going to take us into a whole bunch of other things, and we should never be running the university. That's the only point I'm making is I really think there's a separation of powers here. And I wanted you all to know that from my perspective, I think it's a great idea that you came up with. I'm glad the university would consider it. I think it would be great, but I don't ever want the Board of Regents to get into running the university. That's the point. My part.
I hope I didn't
No,
give the illusion that I was suggesting that, because I think we've established that in previous meetings where I've been called on that. And I totally understand the difference. But also, I think maybe had the Regents been a little more effective at another state institution, the legislature might not have had to bail them out. We're not in that position. We're not going to be in that position. But it's fair for us to raise concerns from the positions that we have.
and that's why I want to support you as a regent in that decision.
Okay.
That level.
Gracious and accepting support wherever it comes from, in whatever manner. Thank you, Steve.
Next, please, the finance and budget.
All right, well, I want to make a few comments. In looking around the room, there really are not many seats occupied by people who remember how board meetings used to be run. And I appreciate the fact that we can sit here and have substantive discussions and input freely from all members. And I think that is a great way for boards to function. And I certainly appreciate the fact that we have that kind of board today. And I appreciate everyone's input. Also, I think as a board, we recognize that students, staff, and faculty are the heartbeat of the university. And we certainly participate in decisions that affect all those groups. One might argue, however, that our greatest responsibility is to maintain our fiduciary duties and the Budget, Finance and Budget Committee, which Chair McKinney has done a fabulous job with over the last few years, has put us in a position with President Caboni's strategic plans that is now stable and sustainable. And without a stable, sustainable university financially, we might not have a university. And there are other boards around the country that are dealing with problems much unlike ours. So kudos to Susan and her team and Chair McKinney and everyone for the difficult work over the last few years. On day one, President Caboni woke up to a $27 million deficit, if I remember correctly. And so the road of the last 5 years has been long, it's been difficult, and at times very painful. And so to be in the position that we're in now and have 174 days of cash on hand is no small achievement and something that we should all celebrate. And I'm grateful for everyone's input into that. The new words that I go to sleep with now are, of course, enrollment and retention, which is the answer. But now compression and inversion. My mind every night, but we're working on those problems. And America's favorite new word, if anyone's looking at front page news these days, is egregious. And I hope that word doesn't get hackneyed around here, because we are working on those salaries and problems. I don't hear any disagreement around this table that we should do that. So that's a good thing too. I may have spoken too long, but we will, if everyone can hang in there, we have students waiting outside. I think if we can get through the next committee meeting, we'll then take a short break before we go into the executive session. So, Henson.
Thank you, Chair Bale. Hello, Dr. Logan. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Let me get our guests.
Jeff is good.
They're coming this
They're
way.
coming in. I'll let you take it away, sir.
Thank you so much, Chair Vincent. Thank you to the Regents. We have guests today that I have asked, actually, Dean David Brown to introduce from the Ogden College of Science. Well, it's a real pleasure to be able to introduce our guests. Please come on in. So we all know that WKU prides itself on quality programs that go beyond the classroom. They obviously contain the classroom and traditional learning, but we take a great pride in our students doing hands-on work. As President Caboni often likes to quote the FFA, our students learn to do and do to learn. We have a number of exemplary programs, and one that rises to the top is our civil engineering group. Our American Society of Civil Engineers chapter participates each year in evaluations of nationwide chapters. And I have to say, they come out consistently in the top 10, if not better. And so this is a wonderful group of students. I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of our faculty mentors, Tyler Baker and Jason Wilson. And they have been doing some incredible work this year. And so I won't steal their thunder, but I will say that this is what we're here for. These students come in, you're ready to take on problems, and they do it successfully. And their next steps are big ones. So I'll let them take over. Glad to have
Hello, everyone. I'm Allison Eder. I'm the president of ASC Student Chapter here at Western. And I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity of allowing us to speak and share with you what makes our student chapter stand out from the other universities. So, do I have a clicker? Thank you. So first of all, it wouldn't be possible without our two faculty advisors, Jason Wilson and Tyler Baker. I'm involved in many organizations on campus, and so it's easy for me to say that they stand out as faculty advisors that go above and beyond. We wouldn't be able to accomplish half the stuff without them or do half the fun things that we get to do. And so these next several slides that I'm about to go over are going to show you what I mean by accomplishments. So when I first stepped up and became president of this chapter, Jason and Tyler sat down with me and they were like, okay, what are some goals that you want to do this year that's going to benefit this chapter here at Western? So these are the 4 goals that I came back with about 2 weeks after I about it. One was to increase underclassmen attendance by 25%, 2, increase volunteer opportunities, 3, increase club collaboration by 50%, and 4, increase meetings held by 15%. All right, so this year we've done a lot of stuff. I'm just going to go over a couple of the cool things that I thought that we've done. So on the far left of the slide, this is ASCE and KSBE. We partnered with Potter's Children's Home to decorate and fill stockings for the kids in need in the community. The middle picture is Stupp Bridge. They actually gave us an amazing opportunity to tour their company's plant. And then lastly, this picture on the right is ASCE doing the tornado cleanup. We had 25 students and 2 faculty advisors. We went to multiple locations throughout Bowling Green and helped clean up for free of charge. So ASCE isn't just about school. We've actually built a community of lifelong friendships. All these people you see to my right, I consider them one of my closest friends. And so we've done different stuff like pumpkin painting. So these are actually meetings that are held. Some of them have to be fun activities. Some of them are actually about civil engineering and having guest speakers. So we also had volleyball tournaments. We've had joint meetings with National Society of Black Engineers and Habitat of Humanity. And we did tie-dye shirts on that meeting. And then we also have some friendly competition of canoe races at the lake. And so these are memories that will carry on with us as we look back on our college experience. This is why ASCE is super important for me. Next up, I am going to let the canoe, we're the first place regional concrete canoe team to do their presentation.
As Allie said, we placed first place in the regional competition for the canoe. And so we're happy to be here to present the presentation that won us first place there. I'm Grayson Boer, the project manager.
I'm Barry Williams, the mixed design captain.
I'm Riley Davis, co-captain of row.
I'm Jordan Clemens. I was the structural analysis.
Good morning and welcome to the grandest show this side of the Mississippi. We would like to introduce to you the show you've all been waiting for, the Monroe, in remembrance of the father of bluegrass, Bill Monroe. As with each great concert, you need a great band to ensure everything goes smoothly. Our team structured the workload to fit each member's strong suit, maximizing the quality of the end product and allowing members to learn new skills. Our team structure was to have 1 project manager and 6 sub-team captains. This means that 1 person doesn't have to manage the entire team, and instead the sub-team captains could delegate tasks to each of their sub-teams. One way our team communicated was through a project execution file shared via Blackboard. This allowed members to share dates, progress reports, and project management details. Due to COVID-19, our ASCE chapter numbers have fallen. This caused a problem in finding a sizable workforce to fit our project. The seniors of our program have also not seen a canoe constructed since their sophomore year. This caused a hassle in the construction of our canoe due to the lack of experience. Therefore, our team utilized a critical flow chart to ensure that all tasks were kept on track.
For any concert to run smoothly, a sound check is needed to test your equipment. We use the same theory in our project by means of mixed design and structural analysis. In order to find the most effective whole design shape for our canoe, the team ran tests in a flume, compared drag forces as well as indicators of maneuverability. In the end, we decided that the 2019 canoe shape was the most effective and well-rounded for us to use as well. Load cases were ran where it was assumed that male paddlers weighed 200 pounds and female paddlers weighed 140 pounds. Their placements in the canoe were based on advice given to us by the rowing team. After running these load cases, it was found that the maximum bending moment of 800 foot-pound occurred during the simply supported load case. The composite flexural strength of the Monroe had a drastic increase from previous years, meaning there's more confidence in the boat's structural integrity and allowing the boat to be safe during transit, display, and races of the canoe. Another area of focus was the freeboard and draft calculations. These were done in Excel by calculating submerged volumes at various depths and then equalizing those with the loading of the canoe. By doing this, we can guarantee that the canoe will remain above the waterline with up to an additional 1,000 pounds of loading.
Initially, goals were set by the mix design team to create a concrete mix with a compressive strength of at least 1,800 PSI and a unit weight less than that of water. However, it was soon found that these goals would not be possible due to the mix design criteria, the RFP this year, and the resources that we had. So we decided to redo our goals to instead have a concrete mix with a high compressive strength and a high workability, while lowering the unit weight to be as close to that of water as possible to limit the need for flotation devices. So to assist with this, an Excel sheet was created that allowed the team to easily iterate new mixes while optimizing their gradation and giving an accurate representation of their unit weight. And the addition of the Power 45 curve allowed us to easily optimize the gradation of those mixes while using a wide variety of aggregate sizes. We ultimately created and tested 28 mixes before finding a mix that was suitable for our needs. And although this mix had a slightly higher unit weight than we would have hoped for, we did find that having an increased compressive strength and workability was more important part.
The concert of our project was the actual construction of our concrete canoe. For our mold, we used the previous year's modular mail mold to save on costs and ensure easy removal of the canoe once the concrete is set. For our mold, we is split up into 5 sections of 2-inch thick styrofoam insulation board secured by MDF boards. The construction team repaired the mold prior to the pour day to using drywall joint compound. And then the mold was finished with shrink wrap, and we put pour stops at the bottom with wood strips. The canoe team spent an entire day batching and placing concrete onto the mold. After this, we found that our composite section was 3 layers of concrete with pre-tension braided steel cable and fiberglass mesh. The cable was placed prior to the pour, and the mesh was vibrated between the concrete layers. The canoe wet cured for 2 weeks before sanding and grouting. Then the canoe was removed from the mold and bulkheads were installed, and then the entire canoe was sealed. The encore of our concert is oftentimes the most important act. All semester, the row team has been practicing for the races at competition. We used previous year's canoes with similar shapes, sizes, and weights to prepare us for the conditions of the competition.
The most important sub-team of our project was the safety and QA/QC team. They ensured that campus and CDC safety guidelines were followed throughout the project, as well as ensuring that all work done by the team was up to our standards. The Blue Moon of Kentucky shines bright on our team and on our canoe. Bill Monroe and bluegrass music have played a huge role in the history of our great state. We are proud to continue this tradition with the Monroe.
Very good.
So we competed with this at the beginning of April in regionals in Mongolia, Indiana, and we won first place in the following: canoe technical presentation, female sprint and female slalom races, male sprint, and it was actually snowing and 20 degrees outside, so it really
You go, girls. You go, girls.
male sprint and male slalom races, the canoe final product prototype, concrete canoe overall, concrete cornhole, canoe technical paper, mystery design, and the steel bridge aesthetic. And we took home second place in technical paper and surveying. Sorry, I'm supposed to be showing this. So there are nearly 400 ASE student chapters across the globe. With that being said, we were one of only 7 schools to receive a certification of commendation, top overall student chapter in Region 4, and the Scranton Outstanding Community Service Award finalist. With all this being said, WKU's ASE student chapter would not be what it is without our faculty advisors. They have formed relationships with our students that I've never had, even in the very small town that I grew up in. They care to see us strive and help out, and that is why our student chapter is so phenomenal here at Western. So what's next for our WKU ASE student chapter? We compete with surveying and concrete canoe for nationals in Louisiana, June 3rd through the 5th. Excitingly enough, WKU will be hosting the Indiana, Kentucky ASE and AISC synopsis on April 13th through the 15th in 2023. This concludes my presentation, and I just want to thank you again for allowing us to share that all that ASE has accomplished this year. Thank you.
I would add that I got to witness the construction of the, yes, concrete canoe. As strange as that sounds, they did it.
Yes.
And I was told that they would show up on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. to start construction. I thought, I can wander in there at 6:20 and I'll probably beat the first students. No, when I got there, they were already hard at work. This is a great group of students. So thank you.
Is it possible to introduce everybody, or did that take too long? Or I'm assuming you all are all the rowers and helping do construction and other things as well. Can you all introduce yourselves very quickly?
Well, I'm Brianna Robertson. I was part of the row team.
I'm Cheyenne Rogers, and I'm also part of row team.
I'm Jonathan Graver, and I was part of the making of the paper and academic team. I'm Hayes Coffey, and I was part of the construction team.
I'm Jake Arn, and I was part of the construction team.
I'm Matthew Dick, and I was part of the construction team as well.
I'm Rafa Allah, and I was part of the construction team as well.
I'm Saif Allah, and I was part of the construction team.
I'm Tyler Tompkins. I was also a part of the construction team. I'm Logan Conway, and I'll keep the tree going. I was with construction.
I'm Devin Lay, I was part of the construction team and mixed design team.
I'm JP Prince. I was actually part of the steel bridge team.
I'm Ben Spratt. I'm rowing team captain and QAQC and safety captain.
I'm Jessica Klauser, and I was on row team and construction team.
I'm Trevor Corona, and I was part of the mixed design team.
Thank you.
I'm interested in knowing who you're gonna compete with in the nationals. Who else does this?
So there was, I'm trying to remember, Jason, how many regions are there total?
Well, there's 21 regions. There'll be a total of 25 teams. So Clemson, Puerto Rico Magallanes will be there. UC Berkeley, UC Platteville, UC Madison, Florida Institute of Technology. So there's all over the United States and some abroad as well, a few teams from Canada. So we'll take it there June 3rd through the 5th and hopefully come back with the hardware.
I would point out that there were also some impressive teams that they outcompeted at regionals.
Yes, at the region, we competed against University of Southern Indiana, Notre Dame was there, Purdue was also there. Purdue had a couple teams there, so definitely some big
Stiff
teams.
competition. That's great.
Good job.
Point of interest, I wish there was one other person in the room that, and maybe you could contact him, but he's a big Western supporter and he happens to be president of the National Bluegrass Association. Like Simpson, Benny, room know who Mike is. He's a big Western supporter and he'd get a kick out of that. Support you.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you all for attending, and thank you for waiting for us. I saw you all when we came in, and you all been waiting for a little while. So thank you very much.
I will say, I thought.
I was trying to figure it out.
Dr. Logan, do you have anything else for us?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much for allowing this showcase of our students. I continue to be humbled by what WKU students accomplish in their short time here on the Hill.
Didn't cry this time.
Thank
I
you.
brought Kleenex just in case. Thank you. And that finishes my report.
All right, well, thank you. It is 10:32. We're going to take a short break and we will regather in 8 minutes. 10:40.
Just do their.
Thank you. No.
Our meeting, and with that, we'll go to the executive committee. And we have two items that we have discussed at our previous committee meetings, and we have one new item that we will talk about. But let's take item one, which is approval of construction of new facilities for the WKU athletic softball and soccer programs. We had a nice presentation on that previously, and is there anything new to say or add? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion and a second for approval of the construction of the softball and soccer program. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes. Next item is approval of Provost Emeritus for Dr. Cheryl Stevens, who is with us today, and President Caboni.
Regent Bale, it gives me great pleasure to do this with Cheryl in the room with us. We rarely have senior administrative appointments given emeritus positions, but this one is not overdue. Cheryl has been on sabbatical in the fall, but has moved on to, as she would say, drink the wine. Meaning live her life and live it fully. I can tell you, for those of you who follow her on Facebook, she is having a blast and enjoying every moment of the next phase of her life. Those of you who remember, Cheryl stepped in at a particularly difficult time for our institution as acting provost in 2019. And little did she know, 6 months after she agreed to do that, we'd be in the beginnings of a global pandemic. And one of the reasons we were able to successfully navigate the return to campus, the execution and meeting of our mission, and the classroom environment that we created was because of her leadership. And during those 18 months where we worked together, Cheryl was had a sense of positiveness and support, and also a level of detail that you would expect from someone in the sciences. And so I'm really thankful for the work that she did there. But Cheryl had a long career at the university, and certainly as dean of the college, Ogden College of Science and Engineering, helped to both build programs, but also support our students. And most importantly, I think it deserves a mention. Before we had LLCs in the first year village, she worked to create WISE, Women in Science and Engineering, a living learning community, really to help encourage, support female scientists and engineering students to be successful in programs that are sometimes low on female participation. And so Cheryl's legacy here is a long one. Many things about which to be proud. Cheryl, thank you for everything you did for me as president. You were a wonderful partner. Even when you were pushing me to do things I didn't want to do, and we got them done. And so thank you on behalf of not just myself, all of your colleagues and on the entire university. We appreciate you. We are stewards of this institution, all of us. And at some point, we all will hand the baton off to who comes next. But we build our current success on those who come before us. And Cheryl, you passed the baton in terrific shape. I hope you were able to see where we are and the continued good work that you enabled. And I'm really proud of what we accomplished together. And I'm also really glad you're getting to enjoy the wine. Want to say anything? Not to put you on the spot.
Maybe us to vote first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Unless you need to campaign.
Really, I just want to say it's been my pleasure. I came here to WKU as Dean of Ogden College of Science and Engineering. I'll never forget those days that women were so underrepresented. And there was a celebration last spring where the WISE women, we had a little party for me. And, when they were speaking about the culture shift in Ogden, it was really touching because, it's true that what they acknowledged was that through that work, that we've normalized having women at the table. And that has become much more pervasive across the institution, which I think is really, it's a longstanding legacy, but it's also, it's so important. And it's not just me, it's other people who have recognized the value of adding women to the conversation. So, you know, I loved being dean. I loved being dean. It was such a, I was with my people. These were my people. And the teams that we built and the work that we did was just so important and so impactful. But then as provost, I loved being provost. I was at the big table, at the president's table. I really enjoyed that too. So thank you for the opportunities to be able to serve as I did. And even coming here today it was kind of fun, but I'm glad I'm not going to be back there. Thank you.
Cheryl was also an integral part of the strategic planning process with Bruce Schulte and others, which was the first really big initiative of President Obama's tenure, and she was an integral part of that. I got to know Cheryl during that process, which I think gave a good map for the university, which we're still on. So with that, any other comments or entertain a motion?
So moved.
Or
Second.
second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Very good. Since we all have different first names, it's okay if we refer to George.
I hope so.
Or Curry or whatever. Congratulations, Cheryl. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your many years of service and to our university. We have one more item on the executive committee agenda, and that is concerning a proposal for approval of a philanthropic naming request.
Thank you, Chair Bell. I am here today to seek approval of a philanthropic naming request for Robert R.B. and Bobby Bellwood Brown turf located at ROTC Physical Training Field in recognition of gifts generously given by the Brown family. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert Brown and Bobby Bellwood Brown of Frankfort, Kentucky are both 1973 WKU alumni. RB earned a Bachelor of Science in Accounting, and Bobby earned her degree, BA in Sociology. RB was commander of the Corps Cadets during his senior year at WKU and was a distinguished military graduate. During her years at WKU, Bobby was captain of the Rebelettes drill team. Bobby and RB actually met during their freshman year at WKU when Bobby was incorrectly enrolled in the male PE class, and they married 2 quick years later. And just before their senior year, and they're going to celebrate 50 years of marriage this year. The Browns are very passionate about sustaining the mind, body, and spirit, and believe healthy habits should have an increased focus in society. So it's only fitting that this philanthropic opportunity be given to them to recognize their philanthropy and support of the ROTC program.
Good. Questions, comments from you guys? And I assume they're not with us today. Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion and a second for approval of the philanthropic naming request. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Very good. All right.
Read it, Bill, if I could, before we do the final executive committee agenda item, I'd like to just take a moment to first thank everyone. Today is commencement day. It may be a little bit soggy, but as I will say this evening, if a little bit of rain, after the past 3 years, if anybody thought a little bit of rain would stop us from celebrating, they're sadly mistaken. But today is a celebration of why we do everything else we do for the other 364 days of the year. And so it is my favorite day of the year. It is the celebration of who we are as an institution. And the most important thing is that our young people are embarking on the next phase and the next phase of their journey. But to see their faces today and tomorrow, their families' faces, to watch them celebrate, I hope you all take great pleasure in that, because it's why we all do what we do. So as much as I know that budgets are important, everything else that we do is important. We'll focus on that the other 364 days. This evening and tomorrow, we're going to focus on the success of our young people. It has been a tremendous several months, and I wanted to recap a couple of things that have happened before we go. You all will recall that we had the unveiling of the Eva and Jim Martin's Alumni Center, a tremendous celebration of their $5 million gift to the university that named the center in their honor. WKU was named a gold military friendly school for the first time, increasing our ranking by 3 levels. We're one of only 162 institutions in the nation who are gold institutions. We received a $200,000 grant from CPE to support our innovative summer scholars program, helping young people who need a little bit extra support to be successful in their first year. 3 of our students received critical language scholarships, which is an intensive overseas language and cultural immersion program. It sends our young people abroad to become even more fluent in their languages. We had 2 WKU students who were honored for their Hearst Multimedia competition participation. We had 6 WKU programs among the nation's best in U.S. News and World Report. Graduate programs were recognized within 3 of our 5 academic colleges: College of Education, Potter College of Arts and Letters, and the College of Health and Human Services were nationally ranked. Our young people raised over $83,000 for Children's Norton Hospital with Dance Big Red, dancing the night away just a couple months ago. Jenny Teeters, who is an assistant professor in our Psych Sciences department, received a $417,000 grant for her research, which seeks to reduce substance impaired driving among young adults. And I'm proud of the work she does, not just to ask and answer those questions, but how she involves our students in that research. If you have not seen it, again, the Commons at Helm Library opened just a few weeks ago. It is a tremendous building, and our students are enjoying it very much as they prepare for their finals this week. WKU won the Hearst Photojournalism title for the 6th straight year, beating Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, Arizona State University, the University of Florida, and the University of Kentucky. And we also had 2 students placing in the top 10 in the Picture Story Series competition. You may have seen we lost Bill Gatton just a couple of weeks ago, and are so thankful for the investment and philanthropy of his lifetime. The Gatton Academy is a jewel on our campus, and we're so thankful for his investment there, and also in the LifeWorks Living Learning community. Our WKU forensics team, again, national champions in 2022. Also, the asynchronous national champions in 2022. They competed both fully online and in person for the final competition and won both of those. And then finally, Dr. Janet Tassel of our School of Teacher Education will be studying in the Czech Republic with a Fulbright Award. So a full ending to a terrific spring semester. And I am looking forward to a wonderful celebration tonight, tomorrow evening, and a wonderful and hopeful for all of us relaxing summer ahead. So thanks to our faculty, staff, and students for an incredible year.
I'll move this board.
Just real quick, I forgot. Hold on, Dean Brown, Dean Brown has mentioned that the garage door will be open at EBS if you would like to drive by and see the concrete canoe. I was supposed to tell you all that, so I want to stop by. So I wanted to remember, and also too, I believe this is Matt's last meeting, or will you be with us at the budget meeting? I said, okay, you'll be on Zoom with us. I've got a little something for you, but now Matt is now a member of the Alumni Association. Okay.
mention that, because I think it's appropriate. I'm glad you did. We have our incoming student regent with us. Cole, stand up and introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Well, I would like to take a moment to recognize Matthew Weininger as well. He made a huge impact on me this past year. I'm actually a transfer student. It's my first year on campus. Matt invited me to his office, was one of the first people that I met at WKU. So he's made an incredible impact on me. But I'm looking forward to serving with you all here, and I'm excited for a great year this fall. Thank you.
Forward to having you join us, and as I mentioned earlier, you do have big shoes to fill. Matt's been terrific. Will Harris before him, and Garrett before him. We've really been on a hot streak of great student regents. So welcome aboard. Is anybody else?
Anybody else? All right. I move that the board go into closed session as provided in KRS 61.810 subsection 1 for purposes of discussing proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of the university.
We need a motion on that.
Yeah.
Second motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.